Welcome back. In this video, I will be going over Palantir's most important earnings report yet, which is coming up on May 6th, telling you everything you need to know, getting you up to speed about Palantir's Q1 2024 earnings release. Starting off with a joke here, I saw for Palantir's Q&A section held through Robinhood, currently the question with the most shares is what does Palantir do? And it only has one vote. So Mitchell here is exposing himself as the largest shareholder of 187 shareholders who have asked questions, and he doesn't even know what Palantir does. So hopefully this video is helpful to him. So let's get going with the top questions that have the most votes. I'll just whip through these, then I have a lot on the numbers that I want you to understand before May 6th. So how is Palantir management going to address these questions? Are there any merger and acquisition discussions going on? Now, I think obviously they're not going to disclose fully if there is a discussion happening, but I think what they're going to say to answer this question is they like to develop a lot of their technology internally and less of a focus on inorganic acquisitions. Now, they have done acquisitions in the past, but I would be surprised if they say their strategy going forward is to acquire anyone. So I'm expecting a non-answer there. Next, we have, now that you've successfully gotten to profitability, do you think you'll be able to continue growing EPS? Any risks to profitability growth? Now, again, this is not a great question because, what are they really going to say here? Of course, they're focused on growing the company. I'm not really sure why this has 300 votes because there's not anything specific they're going to really talk about here. Any risks to profitability is an interesting question, but this is just more their business in general. I don't see any risks with profitability. That would be, do you see any risks to the commercial or the government business? I think it's less on how does the revenue convert to profitability than it is about how do we actually grow our contracts overall. What's your vision for the next 10 years? Will you emerge as a global leader for AI? What AI products and services can we expect from Palantir the next 5 years? So I don't really like this question because, of course, we already see Palantir as a leader in AI. Palantir is way up there in terms of having AI revenue. AIP now, which was a big one, so I'd expect them to talk more about that and less about anything that we haven't heard just yet. When will Palantir be added to the S&P 500? Palantir themselves does not know. If they do choose to answer this question, they are going to say, we are now eligible. It is up to when the S&P decides. Every quarter, they make an analysis of what companies to add and what companies to remove. This is definitely not a question Palantir can answer because they do not know. And how does Palantir plan to be ahead of its competitors? I think this is just another throwaway question because Palantir management can choose to answer it any way they want. I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with these questions. I'm just criticizing them from the perspective of we're going to get a lot less from Palantir than we would if we ask something specific. So enough of that. Let's get into the details here and the fundamentals of the business. So far this year, we've seen the stock up 32% year to date. It was up a lot more than that. It's fallen. Past month, it's down 7%. It has fallen from a peak of a bit more than that, probably around 12% or maybe 15%, from up around $27 per share. Analysts, just generally speaking, do not have much of a direction for where they think Palantir is going. There are 20 analysts, so Palantir is no longer suffering from having a lack of analysts covering them. This is not an undercovered company anymore. And overall, they're saying to hold Palantir, they have an average price target of $20 per share with the stock at $21 per share. That's also something I forgot to mention. Palantir stock has really cooled off now at about $21, $22 per share heading into earnings versus $27 when it was, really getting a decent amount of hype behind it after that past earnings release. So I think there is room for it to run up after. I'm glad it has cooled off because it allows that opportunity to be realized. But all of that to say, Palantir's analysts really are just very neutral on the stock at this point, which I think is a good thing. They're not overly bullish. They're not overly bearish. They're sort of waiting to see what's going to happen. And so let's get into the numbers. Palantir's guidance, their range for Q1 2024 is $612 million to $616 million, and the analysts are expecting $615 million with a split of $322 for government and $292 for commercial. So let's look at the revenue guidance accuracy. So when Palantir says $612 to $616, how accurate are they? Well, it turns out they usually beat by over 1%, 1.4% on that number. So if we take 616 times an addition of 1.4%, we're actually getting about $625 million in revenue, which would be a big beat of expectations from the analysts of 615. It would be $10 million more than expected. So I would expect them to fall somewhere between maybe 615 and 630. I wouldn't really see too far beyond 630 because they usually are very locked in and dialed in terms of how accurate they are over time. That 1.5% or so has really been tuned, as you can see, with all of these guidance points that they've given over time. And in terms of the surprise from what analysts are expecting, this is a different graph here. Palantir has only once missed, and I think in this case it was actually maybe they came in line. I don't think it was a complete miss. Either way you look at it, Palantir has either never missed their revenue guidance or has only once missed it in however many quarters are listed here. Many times beating it pretty significantly, but once again, it's going to be close to that 1 to 2% overall. And this is, you could see what the stock did after. So we have some big green bars very recently on Palantir's earnings releases. And this is back when the stock was getting hammered down. So we've seen that recovery. So I'm definitely very interested to see what the stock does this time around. I wanted to also show you this very interesting illustration here with government revenue on the top, same story. And then commercial, government missed, but commercial beat. Government beat, commercial missed. Like that's when the SPAC era was happening. And then more recently, we've seen government struggling, but commercial is really driving the revenue growth. So this is what I really love about Palantir's business, is they're able to see this diversity of revenue streams where it's really, in a sense, when it's cyclical with government contracts coming in Q3, maybe commercial's a little slower then, but it really all works out and it blends together very nicely where Palantir is able to beat time and again. As for EPS, this is on profitability. The expectations, as I saw in Felix's video, are very interesting in the sense that we actually see analysts expecting lower, if not the same profitability for Q1 than Q4. So I've never seen Palantir regress in terms of their profitability. So I think they're probably going to have a surprise beat here in terms of profitability. Is it going to be a big surprise beat? No, definitely not. But I think it's going to be a surprise beat nonetheless. So for the EPS surprise history, if we just clue in on this, this is when the SPAC, really all of the negative financials from the SPACs were hitting them. But other than that, we've really only had one miss, and the rest of it, they've been beating EPS. This is a company that is so dialed in on their earnings, you really know what the numbers are before they even report them. And that's what I really love about Palantir. But that begs the question, what does the stock move on after earnings? Really, it moves a lot on what they say on the call and how that goes, and less on the numbers because revenue is going to be within a very tight range. EPS might drive something if it's a big surprise, but usually it's not the biggest surprise. So hopefully this video is helpful. Let me know what your expectations are. I'm really looking forward to earnings. Until next time.